Another year, another update on what's been discovered in Nobuhiko Obayashi's filmography. After the massive dump of lost films we received last year, this installment isn't going to be nearly as robust as the previous one, but we do have a few more unearthed gems that have been discovered. On top of now available subtitles for the two movies I will be reviewing in this video, the final Nobuhiko Obayashi film that was missing from our catalog, Why She Won't Marry, has been found and posted on Internet Archive. That officially marks the end for our search when it comes to Nobuhiko Obayashi's feature-length outings, at least as far as we know right now. In addition to Why Won't She Marry, something else that has recently been discovered is the television show Hito wa Sore o Scandal to Iu from 1978. All 21 episodes for the show are currently available to me, although it should be noted that only the first one is directed by Obayashi. We also now have a description for the series found on mydramalist.com. It reads as follows. The story revolves around the theme of a woman becoming independent. The heroine gradually grows stronger in the midst of drastic changes in her life, from being a naive young lady, to intense love, to childish, to being an unwed mother, and so on. Momoe Yamaguchi plays Nobuko Onodera, the only daughter born into a wealthy family. After the sudden death of her father, many ups and downs follow her in real life. On top of that, I managed to track down the soundtrack to the show, much to my surprise. I've been playing it in the background for this video so far, and I'll leave a link in the description for you to check it out on your own. I highly recommend you do, as it's pretty great and has that distinct 70s sound I love. With Why She Won't Marry and Hito wa Sore o Scandal to Iu discovered, we may have finally found the last of Obayashi's material when it comes to his narrative works. Of course, there are always still lost commercials he directed and experimental short films pre-1957 that may or may not be gone forever. Who knows, there may be even more features, shorts, or television projects unbeknownst to us that may pop up at some point. Only time will tell, but for now, let's work with what we have to bring you two brand new Nobuhiko Obayashi reviews. One Summer's Day, also known under the horrible alternate title That Guy, was released in 1999, making it Obayashi's final theatrical release of the 90s. The Nagaharu Yodogawa story, A Sinaste's Life in Kobe, was released later in 1999, but that was a television movie, so my point still stands. Another note of finality for this film is that it is the third and last entry in the Shin Onomichi trilogy, the first two films of which were Chizuko's younger sister and Goodbye for Tomorrow. The story of One Summer's Day revolves around a boy named Yuta who lives in a suburb of Tokyo. Summer vacation has arrived, and despite having other plans, Yuta is tasked by his parents with going to Onomichi to look after his supposedly senile grandfather, Kenshiro. Through this visit, Kenshiro tells Yuta about his childhood, which literally, or figuratively depending on how you want to interpret it, transports them back into the past to see Onomichi 70 years prior. Yuta by nature is a highly imaginative daydreamer, and often sees the world through his lens of fantasy. This just so happens to make him the perfect person to connect with Kenshiro, who, due to his age and deteriorating mental state, also experiences life in a similar vein. This develops into a very special kinship, creating a much stronger bond between the two than either of them initially expected. Much like Samurai Kids, or debatably The Drifting Classroom, One Summer's Day is aimed at younger audiences than most of Obayashi's outings. The dynamic between Yuta and Kenshiro really is the highlight of the story. Yuta is kind of an outcast in his class, and Kenshiro isn't taken seriously by anyone in this family. This is one of the few Obayashi movies that focuses not on an Onomichi native, but an outsider who is seeing the city from his own perspective. Kind of makes me wonder if this is some sort of analogy to how Obayashi felt showing his own family members around his hometown, with them perhaps perceiving him as a senile old man. I mean, if they watched some of his wacky experimental short films, I could maybe see where they got that perspective. Based on my description, it might sound like this movie is really fantastical, and it certainly is, but it also has one foot grounded in reality. The setting of Onomichi, both in the present and in the past, are pretty realistic. It's within that setting that the movie can explore its stranger elements, whether that being the characters flying over the city, talking to fish, or fighting a giant octopus in a great stop-motion sequence. I love how Yuta can literally see the world through his grandfather's eyes by peering into his glasses. This is definitely a film that's commenting on the distinction between reality and fiction, particularly when it comes to its two leads. What I find interesting is that it's not outright condemning one or the other. It seems to be a commentary on how reality can better inform fiction, and vice versa. The score in One Summer's Day is absolutely beautiful and adds to the whimsical nature of the film immensely. It was composed by two people, Kosuke Yamashita, who I will talk about a little more when I get to my review of The Last Snow, and Sotaro Manabu, who worked on many Obayashi films both before and after this project. I have reason to believe that the original composer for this was supposed to be Joe Hisaishi. You see, a couple years after the release of One Summer's Day, Joe Hisaishi composed the score for a little movie you may have heard of called Spirited Away. If you look at the track list for Spirited Away, you will find that the name of one of the songs is One Summer's Day. Given how close the release dates were between both films, and the fact that Hisaishi had worked with Obayashi a lot around this time, I believe it's entirely possible that he originally composed that song for Obayashi's film, but for some reason, possibly scheduling conflicts, he eventually repurposed the song into Miyazaki's creation. It could be a coincidence, but it would make sense to me. Either way, Yamashita and Manabu do a great job scoring One Summer's Day, which is even more impressive when you realize this was Yamashita's first film scoring job. Speaking of debuts, this is also the first Obayashi movie to feature its child star, Takuro Atsuki, in the lead role. Obayashi is exceptionally good at getting performances out of children, and this is no exception. Atsuki would later go on to appear in many of Obayashi's subsequent films, including a lead role in Labyrinth of Cinema. Kaiju Kobayashi, who plays Kenshiro, does a great job as well. There are some fun side characters too, particularly Horo Kato, who appears frequently in the past scenes. The movie is great from a technical level as well. This is a late 90s fantasy film, so as you might guess, there is some awkward CGI at times, but it doesn't take away from the experience for me, as Obayashi has always reveled in the artificiality of his special effects. Since it's an Obayashi film, there is also the use of matte paintings, stop motion, green screen, and some pretty great cinematography. The scene with Yuta and Kenshiro flying over Onomichi really reminded me of the scene with Lois and Clark from the original Superman. Well, and Superman 4, but let's not talk about that. One Summer's Day is another very solid outing from Obayashi. The highlight really is the chemistry between the two leads, which piled on top of the exploration of Onomichi's history and the whimsical fantasy elements, make for a very entertaining watch. If House is a feverish nightmare, then One Summer's Day is a feverish daydream. I really like the themes of the movie, such as the exploration of nostalgia and both the pain and comfort that comes from that simultaneously. I will say, I had mixed feelings about the movie's ending, not because I found it too sad, but because it seemed to me like a way too obvious choice for the story to go. Even then, it does retain the message and theme of how valuable it is to pass your experiences on to younger generations, so I can see why they did it. This movie might actually be good to use to teach Onomichi's history, so long as the students understand that there was no talking fish or giant octopus monsters. Heck, this movie is over 25 years old by now, so it could be used as a document of Onomichi in both the 90s and the 20s. I would personally say that One Summer's Day is my least favorite film in the Shinomichi trilogy, but not by much. It's very close in my opinion to the quality of Goodbye for Tomorrow, which I also thought was great. Granted, neither of them are anywhere near as good as the masterpiece that was Chizuko's younger sister, but few films are. Now that all three are available with English subtitles, I have to say, I prefer this overall to the original Onomichi trilogy. I'd even go as far as to say that it rivals the anti-war trilogy as Obayashi's best. Granted, I've only seen one movie in the Oida trilogy, so I'll have to wait to be sure on that. Speaking of which... The Last Snow was released in 2002 and is based on the song Nagore Yuki. The musical piece and the film share the same name in Japan, although translations tend to refer to the song as the unseasonal snow. When I originally talked about this movie, I credited the artist of the song as Japanese folk musician Iruka, but that is somewhat inaccurate. The original's artist was actually a Japanese band called Kaguya-hime, which translated into English means Princess Kaguya. Yes, that Princess Kaguya. The song was originally released in 1974, with Iruka's cover coming out the following year, popularizing both the tune itself, as well as being Iruka's breakout hit as an artist. If you are unfamiliar with the piece, do not worry, because the opening credits of this film features a cover of it. Whether you're listening to this cover, Iruka's interpretation, or the original version, each one is beautiful and worth checking out. While I don't speak Japanese, and the only insight I have into the song's meaning is from translated lyrics, it touches on themes of nostalgia, loss, growth, and personal relationships, while telling the story of two people parting ways from each other at a train station. This seems like exactly the type of music that would speak to Obayashi on a personal level, so I'm not too surprised he used it as an inspiration for one of his projects. The last snow takes place in the town of Usuki, located in the Oita prefecture. That makes it the first film in Obayashi's Oita trilogy, being followed by Song of Goodbye in 2007 and Scenery to Remember in 2008. I am very curious to find out what significance the Oita prefecture played in Obayashi's life, because I'm sure it wasn't picked at random. With the Onomichi, Shin Onomichi, and Anti-War trilogies, the thematic significance of those and their settings are very easy to grasp, but with the Oita films, it's a little bit vaguer. Maybe I'll get more insight into that once the other two entries become available with subtitles. The story of The Last Snow follows a man named Yusaku, who is suicidally depressed after his wife leaves him. He receives a call from his old friend Mizuta, telling him that his own wife, Yukiko, is on her deathbed after a tragic scooter accident. This incentivizes Yusaku to travel back to his hometown after being absent for 28 years. The journey causes Yusaku to reflect upon his childhood memories, many of which involve Mizuta and Yukiko, and give insight into their friendship with each other. The story of this film is told through two different time periods. There's the present day with Yusaku returning to Usuki, but also many flashbacks to his childhood that cover events occurring over the course of several years. At first, I wasn't sure if the present scenes were going to be used as a framing device or to tell an actual story, since the movie spent so much time within the flashbacks, especially near the beginning. Yusaku doesn't even reach his hometown until nearly 30 minutes into the film. I wouldn't say it was done poorly, but it was kind of jarring at first, since I didn't know if the flashbacks were supposed to be exposition or the main meat of the film. Once I got used to the unusual structure, I found that both stories were incredibly emotionally satisfying and hold significance to their overall plot and characters. What the flashbacks reveal near the beginning is that Yukiko was in love with Yusaku when they were younger, while Mizuta had feelings for Yukiko. The last time they were all together was after an apparent suicide attempt by Yukiko, but the details around that are left murky. This makes the subtext of the modern scenes much darker, as you know something must have happened to disrupt this bond and cause Yusaku to distance himself from his previous life. It makes you hope for things to work out in the past, even though the movie is telling you explicitly that that's not going to happen. The themes that are touched upon in The Last Snow are very reminiscent of both Obayashi's other work and the song on which it is based. One thing I really took note of was the use of trains in the movie and how they act as a barrier between Usuki and the rest of the world. Every time Yusaku hops on a train to Tokyo in the past, there's always an underlying feeling that this could be the last time that either Mizuta or Yukiko ever see him again. There might be some underlying World War II allegories in here as well, such as seeing your loved ones go off to war and potentially never returning. Normally I wouldn't think about something like that, but this is Obayashi we're talking about. The movie explores how everyone's past will shape their present in one way or another. Living in or avoiding the past can be an enormous detriment that keeps us away from important people in our life, potentially to the point when it's too late to rectify things. This is another one of Obayashi's dialogue-heavy features that doesn't involve any crazy special effects or wacky editing to tell its story. Even so, the cinematography is absolutely engrossing and really knows how to highlight the emotions in the characters. The beginning of the movie uses a lot of harshly lit shots to represent Yusaku's stressful life in Tokyo, which sharply contrasts with the calming beauty of the countryside. There are some really good transitions between the past and present too. I especially love some of the smoother transitions that take place in the same room with the same lighting. It's a really great way to represent the passage of time and show how certain things change and certain things stay the same. By far my favorite part of the movie visually is a scene that takes place during a Japanese festival where everything is lit by torchlights. Perhaps it's the Yusuki Takayoi Festival from a quick Google search? Someone can probably tell me in the comments. The score by Kosuke Yamashita is beautiful too, especially the use of string instruments that give it that authentic Japanese vibe. While this was only Yamashita's second project with Obayashi after One Summer's Day, it seems like they grew a really great rapport, as Obayashi ended up having him score every single one of his films from this point forward. Well, except for So Long the movie, but that was basically a glorified AKB48 music video, so it doesn't really count. The acting is also great across the board. The two leads in the present are played by Obayashi veterans Tomokazu Miura and Bengal, who knock it out of the park as they always do. Obayashi knows how to get the best out of every single person on his crew. Big surprise. The Last Snow is, by all means, another Obayashi movie, and I think any fan of his work is bound to enjoy it. Some may find it boring, but it's one of those films like Haruka Nostalgia, where how much you connect with it is going to depend on how invested you are in the story, themes, and characters. I know a few people were overwhelmed by the 3-hour runtime of Haruka Nostalgia, so I'd maybe recommend The Last Snow as a more digestible experience that is thematically similar, even though I personally enjoyed Haruka Nostalgia more. Regardless, I felt that there was a lot of emotional weight to the storytelling in The Last Snow, particularly the ending, which packs a really heavy gut punch. It may not rank amongst my favorite Obayashi movies, but it absolutely contains a lot of what I adore about his work. I'm really excited to see what the other two movies in the Oida trilogy have to offer, and how The Last Snow stacks up to them. Whatever I end up thinking, this was a very solid starting point, and hopefully it's a very solid ending point for this video. That about wraps it up for today, so thanks for watching. If you'd like to donate to our channel, follow the links in the video description to donate on Patreon or PayPal. You can also send us money via Super Chats on any of the videos. Also, join our Discord server to talk to me and our other subscribers. If you feel so inclined, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share for more videos. This video falls under fair use as a commentary. Until next time, sayonara.